see everyone. I want to welcome you to the 2024 Legends Panel. My name is Michael Shelton. I'm the Vice President and Executive Director of IAAPA North America, and I'm here to introduce the original creator, curator, and moderator of the Legends Panel, now in its 22nd year, Mr. Bob Rogers. I'm going to go off script for just a minute. I will tell you that we have a very large conference program, as you all know, a lot of education, a lot of everything, and it's done by a very large group of volunteers. But Bob is someone special. He brings a panel to us that we probably couldn't get otherwise. Bob knows so many people, and he's so well connected, and he has such a wondrous career, and we're so grateful that he does this. And he does this, and he asks for nothing in return. So he's been so gracious to us, and I just wanted to say a side note on that before I introduce his wonderful resume. So Bob, thank you so much for that. For those of you who don't know, Bob is the founder and CEO of BRC Imagination Arts, a design and production company that has created award-winning attractions for some of the world's greatest brands, sports franchises, and museums. BRC has received over 500 international awards for creative excellence. Personally, Bob has been inducted into the IAAPA Hall of Fame. He is a recipient of the Thea Award for Lifetime Achievement and a former member of the board of directors of both the Motion Picture Academy, the Oscars, if that isn't enough, and also the board of directors of IAAPA. He has personally been nominated for 2 Oscars and 1 Emmy, and has been awarded the NASA Public Service Medal. His first job in this industry was as a magician in the magic shop at Disneyland. Please welcome Mr. Bob Rogers.
Thank you, Michael. That was great. Thank you. Thank you, IAAPA, and thank all of you for spending your precious time with us today. Every moment at IAAPA is expensive and precious, and thank you for being here. I'm Bob Rogers with BRC Imagination Arts, and welcome to the 2024 Legends Panel. Today we are going to talk seriously about the art, craftsmanship, and creative leadership required to create and sustain great experiences. This year, like every year for the last 22 years, the objective of this Legends Panel is to capture and share hard-won creative leadership and storytelling wisdom from our panelists in a way that helps you, the leaders of tomorrow, as you shape the future. From their experience and knowledge, what can they share that will help you launch and lead revolutionary new ideas of the future? Sitting before you are 3 extraordinary talents who embody Ralph Waldo Emerson's words, "Do not go where the path may lead, go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." Each of these esteemed panelists is an accomplished author of influential books that capture and share the unique insights, strategies, and lessons from their remarkable careers. Starting from Bob Weiss. Bob Weiss's career has spanned over 4 decades as an Imagineer, most recently the president of Walt Disney Imagineering. There, he led the creation, design, and production for some of Disney's most iconic projects from around the world. And he's taken the time to share what he learned with us. His latest book is Dream Chasing. Let me see if I can get this to behave itself. Latest work is Dream Chasing, My 4 Decades of Success and Failure with Walt Disney Imagineering. He edited Travels with Figment on the Road in Search of Disney Dreams, which was based on an unfinished draft started by Marty Sklar. Margaret Kerrison was born in Indonesia and raised in Singapore. Margaret has created narratives and scripts, and I want to read this because this is what an astonishing variety: television, film, digital media, games, brand storytelling, location-based entertainment, narrative placemaking, immersive experiences, and she includes being a story leader, helping to organize Rise of the Resistance, the National Geographic Base Camp, and the NASA Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. She's a former writer for BRC and mostly a former Disney Imagineer. Today she's a speaker and creative advisor and the author of 2 books, Immersive Storytelling for Real and Imagined Worlds, A Writer's Guide, and Reimagined Worlds, Narrative Placemaking for People, Play, and Purpose. Your 3rd legend is the author of a series of amazing books that revolutionized the way all businesses think about our craft while showing us the future. He is, of course, Joe Pine. With James Gilmore, Joe is the author of The Experience Economy, the best-selling classic embraced by readers and companies worldwide. It's printed in more than a dozen languages. Experience Economy has been named one of the best business books of all time. And he's about to do it again with his next book, which is expected to be a sensation. Today I will be asking these 3 to share their insights, strategies, lessons, and secrets of a lifetime, some of which you could be applying to your own work next year, next month, or maybe later tonight. Immediately following this panel, your 2024 legends have agreed to stick around for a while to sign autographs if you want, or if you just want to come by and just briefly say hello, that's totally okay too. You don't need to have something to sign. We will form a line starting on Bob and going that direction, and we will stick around. If you have nothing for them to sign, but we would like something, over there is our book table. Dave Hemstaff, we welcome Dave back. He had a couple of years when he was not here at IAAPA, and we're delighted to have him back. We invited him back because he thought some of you might want some books to autograph. And he came because he's as much of a fan as the rest of us. So there's also something very unusual this year. Many of you remember the late Marty Sklar, the Disney legend, who along with Buzz Bryce and I founded this Legends panel. It was 22 years ago. Marty's no longer with us, but Dave has 7 copies of Marty's classic, and they're signed by Marty. And because he's gone, he's not signing anymore. So this is a rare thing. Dave has 7 of them, and Dave said that, apparently precious. So, I believe Dave is packaging them. If you buy one book written by each of our authors, then you could be entitled to buy the Marty book also. He's only got 7 of them. So if any of that is at all interesting, please go see him either now or at any time during the panel. With that introduction, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your 2024 Legends panel. Thank you, because you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to write all that stuff. You put in all the energy to preserve and give away all your hard-won knowledge. I'm trying to write a book myself at the same time. I'm starting to realize this is real work. But as a result of your effort, all of us can just, for a couple of dollars, buy a lifetime of your wisdom. So thank you very much for that. But I got to ask, why on earth did you do this? What possessed you to do it? And let's start with Margaret. 5 years ago today, in this very room, Margaret, you were one of the legends on the 2019 Legends panel, and you had an experience that caused you to write your first book. Briefly tell us about that.
Yeah.
Move the microphone real close so we can hear you.
Thank you so much.
Slide it up next to you.
Yes, okay, I'm moving up. Okay. Is that good? Everyone can hear me? Yes. Yeah, I can hear myself very well. Okay. 5 years ago, I was up here with my esteemed colleagues from Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and we were so excited to share that land with the whole world. And I remember there was a book signing similar to this, and people bought books in the back, but they were not my books. There were someone out there, Star Wars books, Disney books. I think someone brought a menu, like and they were lining up here, and I was signing, and I was like, you know what? One of these days, I'm gonna write my own book so I can autograph it. And that seeds for me on not necessarily coming back here, which is like coming full circle, which is so amazing that I get to come back and have my book here and now have this dream 5 years later of signing this book. So that's, I'm just so
So, Bob Weiss, I gotta ask, 450 pages. You're entitled to be retired at this point. Why on earth did you do that?
I had originally planned to start by thanking Bob for his support to writing and storytelling through his company, through the industry, and now through the book world. But I don't want to give up any of my time. I won't say that, Bob. But if the audience wants to applaud for Bob's support to writing, it's okay. So I don't have any time left, so I'm just going to say I did want to capture that these things are done by amazing teams. They go up and down. You have to have a lot of passion, and you have to, as we say in English, it's not about, I think, following your dreams. It's about really chasing them and getting a whole lot of people to want to chase them with.
Joe, what got you started?
Well, when you asked that question earlier, my response was, yes, I did have to write this book. So unlike others. I started off, as very much of a nerd, working applied math degree, MIT masters, working at IBM, and I wrote my first book on mass customization, but efficiently serving customers uniquely. And somebody once asked me, you talk about how customization automatically turns a good into a service. What does it turn a service into? And I shot back that mass customization automatically turns a service into an experience. I went, ooh, that sounds good. I gotta write that down. I mean, literally just came out of my mouth. It was Providence. And then I thought about it and realized that was true, and that if you design a service that's so right for a person, you can't help but make them go, wow, turn it into a memorable event, into an experience. And therefore, experiences were a distinct economic offering, and therefore there would be an economy based off of experiences. And this was all in 1994, by the way. And so it then had to be written, right? I had to write this book on the experience economy. And let me add to that, while Bob gave me a lot of credit for leadership secrets and all that, I want to point out, I didn't invent the experience economy. You guys did. Right? I just discovered what you were doing and put a vocabulary and a framework to it, and hopefully that will help many others also get into the experience business and stage great experiences for their customers, and thereby create the value, and increase the value they create.
And I'd like each of you to summarize your book, in this case, Dream Chasing, Immersive Worlds, and the Experience Economy. What is your book about? I know it's impossible to summarize all the wisdom that's in an entire book, something that took you a year to write. It's impossible to do that in a minute, but that's what I'm asking you to do in 1 minute or less. Explain your book and try to include why on earth should any of us care what's in it for us. Don't everybody talk at once.
I'll jump in. The book is about creating big projects from the germ of an idea, often in the form of a group of people in a room. We used to say, put them all in a room, lock the door, pass food under the door, and until you have an idea, and then being able to actually have the passion and the fortitude to be able to push that idea. In my case, for Shanghai, for 7 years, to try to make it happen. All these things take big groups of people, lots of energy, lots of passion, and sometimes they're great ideas and they don't happen, and sometimes they do, but it takes a lot of force of will. And I really thought there was a possibility that people would read this book, not just because they're Disney fans or Imagineering fans, but because they are fans or interested in how you manage the creative resources of your organization or your company to be able to have them be able to push their ideas and not have them kind of squelched or not developed.
It's interesting for me because there could be the question of why should I write this book? or why should I be the one to write this book? But I think the big question for me is, if I were to write this book, can I do it? In terms of being able to share this collective knowledge and wisdom from all of the experiences that I've had. And as I'm looking out here, I see my previous BRC family here. I see some previous Imagineers here in the back as well. And then I have my new Tate family over there. And it is all about collaboration and teamwork. And so I put in the perspective of a writer and a storyteller because that's who I am. But all of this is learnings from all of the people, all of the brilliant, talented people I've worked with. And I'm like, if I can do this in a book, and I started just outlining a table of contents. If I were to share my knowledge of what I've learned from all of these brilliant people over the years, how can I do it? And can I do it well enough that people will read it and will want to listen? And I thought I was writing it for writers, but the people who've come up to me have been like scientists, marketing people, directors, all kinds, all walks of life, and said, like, you've given a framework to help me think about creative challenges and creative problem solving. And that's what we do in this industry. We try to find new methods, new ways, innovate, reimagine, reinvent, and push the boundaries of what has been done before so that we can experience something new and different, unique, and meaningful every time.
Okay.
I feel like I got a head start, but let me add that the book basically makes the case that goods and services are no longer enough, that they're everywhere becoming commoditized, and what people want today are experiences. And again, it's a distinct economic offering. It's not just services plus, but it's a business that you can be in. And we outline basically 5 elements of experiences that you need to stage experiences that are robust, cohesive, personal, dramatic, and even transformative. That's basically an outline of chapters 2 through 10 of the book. And I'll add that when I wrote it, of course, this was the industry that most is represented in there, but every industry now is in the experience business. Every industry now recognizes the value of experiences, and so hopefully this is a guide for them to be able to get into the experience business and stage better, more engaging experiences.
Very good. Over the span of your careers, how have storytelling and experience staging, how have those patterns changed? Or if the fundamentals haven't changed, how have the applications, how are the applications evolving, and where are we headed? Nice, easy question.
I'll jump in that the biggest change is technology, and the ability to use technology to create experiences. And yes, that includes augmented reality and virtual reality. And one of the books I wrote is all about how to fuse the real and the virtual. I think there's tons of potential applications of that. But all manner of technology that we use now, including being able to, for the first time, truly understand guests as the individual living, breathing human beings that they are, which harkens back to my work on mass customization. And now we can bring that with things like the Magic Band, with Disney, with Carnival's Ocean Medallion, with other experience platforms out there. Technology allows us to get down to that individual family unit, down to that individual guest, and engage who they are and connect with them based on who they are.
I want to answer the question differently and not ask the question of what has changed but what hasn't changed. And that's this innate desire for all of us to be seen and valued and empowered, to have the sense of agency in whatever we experience. And so there's that need for that human connection, but there's also that need to feel seen and known and belong in a community or in whatever experience that you're experiencing. So I think that no matter what changes, yes, technology is going to change, and it is changing rapidly, my friends, right? And we all have to keep up with it. But I also want to be reminded of what hasn't changed, which is that we want to feel more human, more connected with each other, and find new ways to do that that doesn't take away from the fact that we are humans. We want to be able to restore that humanity more now, more so than ever.
Yeah, I'd add to Margaret's thought about what hasn't changed. And what hasn't changed, I think, is the amazing fact that a few years ago, we were all held up in our homes, and we weren't going out at all, and we were buying groceries and wiping our Cheerios boxes off before we brought them in the house. It is hard to believe that if you go down to Disney or Universal right now, every hotel room is filled, every park ticket is sold, every cruise ship is packed. If you ever thought that human history suggests that people want to go out, they want to be together, they want to share stories together, there is no doubt. There is a fundamental thing about us that wants to share those things and be together to share them. I would say if there's a fundamental change, I wouldn't say it's necessarily technology, though we can trace the roots of technology too, is to remember as developers of projects and experiences that the focus should be on the visitor's story. We're developing the visitor's story, the guest story, however you want to say it, the consumer story. It's not our story. In the book it is, but in the experiences we create, it's about them. And that's really a fundamental of Walt Disney had from the beginning, is I'm going to put people in their own movie. And so we should always remind ourselves that giving the visitor agency into their own stories is a lot of what it's about, probably has been for a very long
time. Story applications have become so diverse that Joe had to invent a broader term to embrace all of them. He calls it experience staging, and he calls all of us experience stagers. What's the difference between storytelling and experience staging in our industry? Anybody?
The storytelling is an element of experience staging. So experience staging is broader than that. It encompasses everything that must be done. It's using a term from theater, and I always like to say it's not a theater metaphor, right? That work is theater, that when you stage experiences, you're on stage, right? You have to engage the audience, right? So that dramatic element of it is important, which often is the storytelling aspect of it, but how do you, theming is different than that. How do you create that organizing principle of the experience? How do you get the sweet spot of the experience? Again, get that personal elements. Those are all a part of what it takes to be an experienced stager. Story is certainly one of the most important aspects of it, but by itself is not enough to truly engage.
In some of the world's greatest attractions, we're seeing show, retail, and food being integrated seamlessly with the overall story experience of the land. When it's at its best, it isn't separated by silos of authority. Instead, it's true seamless fusion. Ollivander's Wine Shop, Savvy's Workshop, and Eataly do what some organizations either think is impossible or refuse to do. They break down the departmental barriers and walls of authority so that they can fully integrate retail, show, and sometimes F&B. But they are also selling something else, transformation. Visitors enter Eataly perhaps just shopping for perhaps some ingredients, but they might emerge as trained and budding chefs of Italian cuisine. Visitors enter Savvy's as civilians and exit as Jedi Knights. They emerge from Ollivander's as Hogwarts students. Now I can relate to this because my first job in the industry was as a magician in a magic shop at Disneyland. My job was to transform guests into magicians. Talk about the integration of show, retail, and food, and where that's going, and talk a little bit about the problems of breaking down these silos of authority that normally squash them.
I'll jump in. I had the pleasure of working with Paul Allen, the Microsoft co-founder, for a number of years as a consultant, and he had a great expression, which is his goal in doing museums and things of that sort was to mass produce life-changing experiences. And I've never really heard a term better than for what we do. But I think that the separation of functions like dining, retail, and entertainment or storytelling are completely artificial to the park world. If you walk down the street of the Robles in Barcelona, or the Muslim quarter of Xi'an, or a little street in Tokyo, smell of the food, the music, the experience, everything about it is all integrated. It's all part of your environmental absorption of what that place is. And unfortunately, as you said, Bob, our management structure sometimes causes them to be separated. And I think people are getting the idea. New projects are coming out, or existing projects being modified, where they realize that people free flow from one to the other. It's all part of the story. The food is part of the story. Shopping is part of the story. There isn't a separate thing. It's all integrated, and the best places integrate. And it's the best managements realize that they have to collaborate together to tell one story, as opposed to, well, you guys tell the creative attraction story, and we'll worry about the merchandise. The guest doesn't see us as separate entities; they see us as one big creative for this experience.
And just to add to that too, is that all of the examples that you had listed, Bob, all of them have this shared experience of wish fulfillment. I want to go to Italy to feel like I'm in Italy again. I want to feel like I can be an Italian chef. I want to feel like I'm shopping in the markets of Italy again. Same with, going into Harry Potter or Star Wars. I want to be a Jedi. I want to feel like a Jedi. I want to feel like a wizard, right? So all of these places, no matter what form they take, how are you going to build a world that's so immersive and interconnected that they don't feel like they're walking from one place to another, and then to another, and to another, and breaking that immersion, and feeling like they are part of that world, and being immersed in it as a player in that world, right? So it's pretend play. And how are we really leaning into that wish fulfillment for each of your visitors?
I would say that, Mari, the transformations can go beyond the pretend play to be actual reality for them, right? To change their identities. Ely is a great example of that, Bob, since you brought up the full progression of economic value there. You see that fifth and final economic offering on top of transformations. We're using experiences as the raw material to guide people to change, to help them achieve their aspirations. And which is basically anything about being healthy, wealthy, or wise is in the transformation business. And Ely is a great example because it sells all 5 economic offerings, right? Because just because you move to experiences and transformation doesn't mean you have to give up the ones below. You can go in there and get the meats and the produce and organic foods and vegetables and so forth. You can buy the packaged goods of them. You get quick service, and on all retail merchandising is the main service activity that they do. You can go into their cafes and their restaurants and I always say it's the most vibrant retail experience in the world, right, that I've ever been to is Italy. And, but then they also have this admission fee, tells you it's an experience, but admission fee cooking school where you learn to become an Italian chef. And the more classes you take, the more you buy, you want to be that Italian chef. And part of the reason it was founded was also to support the slow food movement in Italy. Right, to really get people to change how they ate, how they thought about eating, slow them down, and so it has this transformative mission to begin.
And to have that human interaction of meeting the butcher,
Right.
meeting people who prepare your food, all of these things, right? And having that human connection and that closeness is something that adds to that transformative experience of visiting.
Right, and including rubbing elbows with the
Exactly.
clientele.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, how are we doing so far? Are we enjoying this? Is this good? We cannot do these panels without your enthusiastic support and your generous permission. We do panels like this only because you requested by giving us high ratings. So if you're enjoying this panel, you can do so and want us to do another one like this next year. In this panel and our speakers' high ratings, there are some digital tablets that are being passed around the room. When the tablet comes to you, out of a scale of 0 to 5, give every speaker a 5. That's only because a 10 is not available. And if, on the other hand, you're not enjoying this panel, you don't need to do anything. Just pass the tablet. So let's go beyond the trade floor. This is a bit of a dangerous question to ask at IAAPA. And that's to say that if we look for ideas only on the IAAPA trade floor, we will all become more like one another. talk about what is not on the trade floor, because each of you have been out exploring out the world beyond. Each of you have had clients outside of themed entertainment, the industry, Joe more than anyone. And what are those outside worlds that we can learn from? What are the learning opportunities that could expand our thinking? And perhaps most important to this group, where there's some totally untapped industries that don't have a clue we exist, but they need to find out and they need what we do.
So, there are lots of industries that are doing wonderful things in experiences. I probably work in healthcare more than any other industry because research shows that the better the patient experience, the better the outcomes, and which is the transformation level again. That the outcomes are what matters. That the customer is the product with transformation, and they have learned a lot from themed experience designers, immersive experience designers, and are still behind the curve in trying to integrate all of that. But there's some interesting things that they're doing in terms of I'll say it this way, in terms of purpose, right? Of purpose. I say every experience needs to be themed. Every business needs to have a meaningful purpose, which is a theme simply at a higher level, right? So at the level of the entire organization. And a meaningful purpose is like a theme is an organizing principle for an experience, it's the organizing principle for the organization, for the business, that allows them to decide what's in the business and what's out of the business. It allows everybody to align together, so you're going to get rid of all vestiges of command and control management, and be able to align around this theme that you can hold up as a proposition to which we all ascend. And I think that a lot of healthcare organizations have done that. And again, it's just taking theming to the next level of your strategic intention, of your raison d'etre of why you're in business. And that's something that a lot of hospitals have done. And I think that we can all learn from. I'll mention, I'll bring it back a little bit, is a last article I wrote for Fortune magazine back in August, I think. And it was on flagship offices, right? That people are having difficulty getting people to come back to work. And it's amazing how bad it is out there in terms of that. And because why? Because, I got it exactly the way I like it at home. I don't need to come into work and so forth. And so we said they need to create flagship offices, learning from flagship experience, retail in particular, and make your office like that. There are a number of companies that have done that. In fact, and what they've done then is they've aligned it with who they are as a business. And I think we can then learn back from that and say we can take a look at these and what they're doing with that, how they're exemplifying their purpose and how they work. So one of the things I encourage you to do is to look at your own offices, look at how you work today. Are you putting the same level of attention and detail and storytelling and immersiveness into how you work as you are into how you stage experiences?
I'm going to emphasize what you just said where you started with hospitals. Hospitals have definitely figured out how to create environments that make us feel sicker than we were. They're very good at that.
I was with some great students this afternoon walking the floor, and the thing I advised them to do was to look at the floor as possibilities, not purchases. You're looking at entrepreneurs who have ideas, but your role as a creative person is to have ideas, and there might be some germ of something that you see there, and you say, well, that would make it great if we were to do this with it or that with it. It's not necessarily trying to get something on the floor that you can just take away. But I would take a page from Margaret's point and reverse your question too, Bob, which is to say that we've talked about an epidemic of loneliness in this world. I think there's an epidemic of vacancy in the places we live, in our cities. I mentioned this morning, but I mention it again because we are suffering from a post-COVID world where so many frontages of our towns and cities are empty. And what better way to depress people than to walk down their city street and see that people have moved out? And it relates, Jim, to your point about, are we coming back? Are we, if we're not there, if we're not present, there isn't a reason for for restaurateurs to come. There isn't a reason for the dry cleaners to be there. There isn't a reason for Italy to be there if there aren't people there to come. And I think that's where what we do, what all of you do, we can bring those skills of storytelling into the real world, if you will, to help with this really, really incredibly difficult situation that we find ourselves, not just in America, but around the world.
Yeah, I think my answer is very, very much related to what both of you are talking about, which is that I'm very curious to see if, our former third places, right? All of our schools is one, public parks, all of these places that I talk about in my second book, in terms of how do we rethink these places so they don't become just one-off special places like going to a theme park or going to a museum, but places that we go to every day, because those are the spaces that affect us physically, psychologically, all of that, right? So how do we bring in our partners in health, in hospitals, in schools? Oh my gosh, you should see my son's middle school. It's like, it looks like a cage. And that's not a place of learning, right? Like, I want to be able to provide an environment that cultivates that curiosity, that learning and innovation and all of these things. And looking at public parks today, no matter where you live, in the US or elsewhere, right? You see it vacant. You see malls that are vacant. You see these places that you go to every day and you just want to get in and get out. But why does it have to be that way? Why aren't we building places where we want to linger, where we say, hey, let's grab a coffee or bump into a stranger and say, what's that book you're reading, right? So I want those places again. I want to see those places again. Retail, F&B, whatever it is, those are the places that I'm looking for, hoping to see them come over here.
It has been said that learning is like rowing against the current. If you ever stop, you drift backwards. So today, all of us here in this room are studying you in order to become fresh and up to date. But who do you study? And what do you study to stay not just fresh, but out front?
Who do I study? Study is such a big word. Who am I inspired by? Who am I influenced by? I play a lot of games. I watch a lot of movies. I read different kinds of books. I talk to a lot of different kinds of people from all walks of life. I travel a ton. There's no one method. I feel like that's what makes it interesting, is when you take all of these ideas and cross-pollinate it, that's when something new and fresh comes along. So I agree with Bob. When you walk this floor and you see one ride vehicle or one solution to all your problems, that's not always the case, right? Like, how do you combine? How do you make it into something else that no one else has ever seen before, but it feels new? So I think that, everything is inspiration to me.
Yeah, I think I study, if I were to try to frame it up quickly, I definitely study entrepreneurs, whether they're chefs or people doing interesting new immersive concepts or museums. I love to go to museums. I love to take people with me to go to museums. I think people who are trying to do interesting things that bring together storytelling, learning, experience, and pushing the boundaries of what we know, what we are used to tasting, or used to seeing. I think that's a great venue to try to see things, and it relates to travel. I think travel outside of our sphere, and that includes travel outside of just simply looking outside of our industry, right? But travel, I think for me, I think for a lot of us, is a great way to change your perspective, come back with a different perspective, and with having experienced things that a lot of people do that you haven't seen before.
And I have to say that you're probably one of the better people to look around a room and say, someone's missing, or we don't have a representative of this aspect of the experience, and you pull them in. And with all very differing and varied experiences and backgrounds and talents, all of that stuff, and to have that cross-pollination of different ideas and perspectives,
something from that, which is what I do with ideas. I read a ton. I get 3 newspapers, score magazines. I read tens of books every year, not always all the way through. And I do experience when I travel as much as I can. And the topics range from yes, business and yes, experiences, but also psychology and sociology and philosophy, cosmology, theology, and all of this is grist in the mill. And so what I really do is a pattern recognition. As I start to identify patterns, examples out there and how they fit in, and say, okay, well, there's something significant, right? And every once in a while, it's like all I need is a data point of 1 to say, oh, that's significant. Immediately with that example. And so it all comes in. We come out with ideas and frameworks.
Joe, I'll just add on to that. One of the things I've discovered way later in my career, and now that I'm writing, is the idea that you can explore something that you don't need. That previously, I was always thinking, oh, well, I'm working on this project, so I got to look for things like that. As opposed to saying, you could read something, see something that has absolutely no relevance to you, apparently, at all. And it all becomes a part of your total perspective.
Yeah, nothing's wasted. No matter what you consume, what you create, all of those things, you're like, well, it's never, oh, well, that was a waste of time. It always comes back.
A person's initial success can sometimes limit their thinking. The person who owns a hammer sees every problem as a nail. In order to become thought leaders of the whole picture, what was the hardest thing each of you had to unlearn?
That's a hard question.
I think that I would use the term I used a lot when I was in engineering was what I called the Emperor's New Clothes syndrome, which is that the entire team is convinced that this works, and then you find out that actually they didn't all think that. That they all kind of knew, or somebody says later, I kind of knew that was never going to work. Well, that's probably a good thing to say earlier. And, the number one thing to me to unlearn is to have an insular team, and as you said, Margaret, a team that maybe thinks alike, because you cast it, so you look for people that emulate what you think, versus, I think the number one thing I try to instill in anything I work on today or previous to that, in my later years at WDI, was peer reviews. Number one thing, and we learned this from the Pixar group, to bring in someone from outside that circle, or bring in 3 or 4 people from outside that circle. And you can make it pretty relaxed. You can say, look, this is what Pixar does. You don't have to do what they say. You just have to listen to what they say. And in the listening process, you discover those things that everybody seems beholden to that aren't necessarily the case. And generally speaking, if you get the same note 3 or 4 times from an outside opinion, you probably should address it. You should probably be thinking about whether that's the right thing or not. But if you never ask the question, it's easy for one group of people on one journey to kind of convince themselves of things that aren't necessarily true.
Yeah, I'm going to reject the premise that you don't unlearn things, or that you shouldn't unlearn things, because again, they're all grist for the mill, and they come back another time at some point. You certainly want to undo things or stop doing things that you used to do. I think that's an important thing. And there's a lot, that I'm sure you've all been looking at AI and all that, and there really are some things that it says, like, I don't have to do that particular thing anymore, and therefore you can spend your time in more high value, high leverage things that you in fact do well. It's the law of comparative advantage inside your own thinking process.
I want to answer it now. All right. So in my experience, my career, I find that my favorite kind of people are the ones who change their minds. If they had a very strong idea and listened to feedback and realized that they might not necessarily be right, that they are able to shift. And those are the people that I'm like, I like this person. Because they were able to put away their ego and put away their titles and all of these things to realize, you know what? Yeah, I don't need to have all the answers, and I don't always have to be right in a meeting. But we can come to that answer and that solution together. So I think that that's probably the most impactful for me in terms of the unlearning, is that you don't have to have all the answers at that moment in time. It's okay for you to say, I don't know, and it's okay for you to change your mind and to shift. If you did come backtrack, as long as you just stop and say, you know what, guys, I'm so sorry, but this is the way we're going now because we have new learnings or new whatever data and all of this.
Okay. If you're going to write or create something original, you need to depart from the known path. And when you depart from the known path, the first thing that happens is you get lost. So when you're pioneering new ideas, how should we manage risk?
Well, again, when I pioneer ideas, I'm not going out there and then spending $100 million on something that don't have the same issues. But I do very much have that feeling of getting lost sometimes, lost in the wilderness, and understanding how can I come back out of that. It's sort of, and it is not coming back. It is going through that and getting to the other side. And so I'm risking my time and sometimes my sanity, but it works.
I think risk is an important creative driver. By creative, I mean everybody. I don't mean just artists. I mean everybody who works on projects, from engineers to technology to software to art, are all creative. But you have to be able to take risks, and then you have to be able to take your management along with you to want to share those risks and get them on board with you. That's part of the role. It's not just say, oh, you should take a risk with us. It's to help to make those risks calculated in such a way that people are willing to take them with you and willing to try something. I think this relates to the discussion about AI. I think is the more predictable we all are, the more we should be replaced by AI. The more unpredictable we are, the more I think we defend ourselves against the known. If something can go out and collect the known things from the internet and create something, then we should create the things that are completely unexpected. And that requires risk. There's no other way to do it. But we as professionals, if you're in a situation where you're in a company or something, we as professionals have to know how to quantify risk and how to be able to mitigate risk where we can. But that doesn't mean you don't take big ones. And if you didn't take big ones, you wouldn't advance.
And my very short answer to that is when I see risk, I usually run towards it rather than run away from it, because those risky situations are always the one that has the huge payoff. And yes, we do have to quantify it and all of that, but that's where it's most exciting. And I like that point that, the more that we are unpredictable and the more that we are able to capture and embrace our humanity to understand what motivates us and what innovates us, that comes from us, and that doesn't come from anyone else around you. All of us are unique. All of us bring something different to the table. And so you should run to that. Whatever your version of risk is, I say run for it, towards it.
The late Marty Sklar, one of my favorite Marty Sklar quotes is, everybody knows there's no such thing as a bad idea, and I've seen a lot of them. So in its early stages, when it's brand new, how do you tell a promising idea from a lame one?
I think the important thing is in a venue where you are trying to come up with a new creative idea is to mitigate the natural tendency we all have to say something is the lame idea, or my you have to, it's not that you believe that every idea you are currently hearing is great. You know that some of them, even in your mind, you might be saying to yourself, you tried that, it never worked. But you don't need to say it at that point. You need to accumulate. I always try to tell everybody that at the end of this 4-day golden time we have together to do a brainstorming for charrette, we will collate and then analyze and we'll do all that stuff later. We will do it, and we will sort through and cull through what we think the best possibilities are. But if you try to do that at the moment you were trying to birth a new idea, you're just cutting the possibilities out. But there might be something out there that you did try, but we have a better way to think about it. So the reason I think Marty would say that, and I can hear him say that quote, would be, look, this is the room where we aren't saying no to stuff. This is the room where we are trying to put everything up on the walls, and we're going to stand back from it, and then we're going to call it later. But we're not trying to edit it this point.
I mean, between an awesome and a lame idea, it's very subjective, right? Every one of us has an idea of awesome or lame that is completely different. Ultimately, who decides what the great idea is the audience and the visitors, because they keep coming back and they're willing to pay tickets for it. So that's the measure of success. But how do you think about it earlier, before you even open the park or the land or whatever, all of these things, right? And I think that every idea that is thrown out there, there is a reason that person threw out that idea. So you have to be able to look at it very equally, not lame, not awesome, any of those things. There's a reason why that person threw out that idea. And so there's a seed of something there that can be kept and can be grown into something else, that can be combined into something else. All of these ideas are interesting. It doesn't have to be awesome or lame, they're all interesting.
When I work with clients, it's somebody has to champion it. There has to be somebody that says, yeah, this is what they think is a great idea. And like you said, that until you actually get it in front of people, particularly with experiences, you really don't know, right? And it's never going to survive. You know, in Silicon Valley, I'll talk about pivots and that sort of thing. Well, the same thing there with experiences, right? The original idea rarely survives intact. You've got, as you go through and you figure it out, and you get people to give you feedback, and you go through prototyping and piloting, et cetera. Right? It's always going to be different, and you've got to save money aside and time aside, knowing that once it never like what's the Army phrase, that a plan never survives a contact with the enemy, right? Neither do experiences. But you get a contact with guests. You've always got to be flexible, right?
I used to live across the street from a guy who was a flavor inventor for 31 flavors ice cream. And it was fascinating. He was just like an Imagineer. And they'd go to open markets, they'd go around the world, they'd find all these herbs and all these different things, different combinations. He said, once a quarter we sit down and we try these 12 incredible new flavors. And management will say, can't you just do something new with vanilla?
There you go.
Give the people what they want.
Joe, I'd like you to talk a little bit, because you had something that I thought was not necessarily a surefire formula for success, but you talked about the 5 elements, and you mentioned them earlier very briefly. I'd like you to go just give us about a minute or a minute and a half on this: robust, cohesive, personal, dramatic, transformative. Only slower than that.
Okay. So robust is about hitting the sweet spot of the experience. We've got this 4E model, or 4 realms of experience model in chapter 2 of the book, which is quickly entertainment, educational, escapist, and aesthetic, right? Aesthetic with an E, so we can call them our 4E model. And so the sweet spot has elements of all of those, right? And there's so many in this room, in this industry out there, and IAAPA land that say we're in the entertainment business, or themed entertainment. Well, entertainment is only one of the 4 realms, and you need to encompass as much of that to be able to hit that sweet spot, and that's when an experience can really sing. Cohesive is about that theme, about the organizing principle, the underlying concept of the experience. As I was telling somebody earlier, all experiences are themed, you just haven't always done it intentionally, right? And your guests will always get some theme out. So come up with that organizing principle, allows you to again decide what's in and what's out. Personal is that aspect of customization, of recognizing that commodities, goods, services exist outside of us, experiences exist inside of us, right? So reaction to the events that you stage in front of us. And so you have to reach inside of people, engage them, and the more personal you make that experience, then the more likely you are to engage them, right, at that personal level. And mass customization is about doing so efficiently, which again, technology allows in so many ways. And then dramatic is the rising to a climax and come back down again. It's the story structure that you have. I love Freytag diagrams myself, and other ways that you engage people in immersive storytelling is all about that drama. If you have a flat experience, right, nothing much happens, then it's not going to create a memory. And that's the minimum requirement experience, that it is memorable. To get to the last factor, I'll say, one of the things that happened after COVID is that increasingly memorable isn't always enough for people because we so miss being with other people, particularly our loved ones, our friends, our colleagues, even complete strangers in arenas and so forth, that we increasingly look for meaningful experiences as well. Memorable experiences engage who we are. Meaningful experiences connect with who we are in some way that gives that significance to it. And then there are transporting experiences, which many of you are in the business of, experiences that take us out of who we are, that give us awe, that allows us just to purely be immersed and absorbed in an experience that gives us that peak experience, those feelings of euphoria and awe and so forth. Transcendence is a key element. And then finally, the fourth level of experiences that we're going to is transformative. Transformative experiences that change who we are. And those are the ones that have the highest value. Those are the ones that can lead to a full transformation offering where you say, hey, we're in the business of transformation. We guide people, like you deliver services, stage experience, you guide people in helping them achieve their aspirations, helping them become who they become. And that's what transformations are all about, and they are predicated on experiences. We only ever change through the experiences that we have, and so there's a tremendous opportunity there for experience designers to think about how do we go beyond merely memorable and highly meaningful and even deeply transportive to be truly transformative.
Bob and Margaret, you have each created fact-based, science-based, or history-based attractions, and also a lot of fantasy-based attractions. And Joe, you wrote an entire book about this. So what is authenticity in a theme park? And if it's important, why?
There you go. All right. So yeah, we'll work on it. And basically there are, it's a book about authenticity in business. It's not like a personal authenticity book where you get things out of it from that perspective. But one of the things we learned from philosophers is that all economic offerings are inauthentic, right, in their core. Ontologically used, big philosophical word. They're in their being, they are inauthentic. But we can perceive them as authentic, phenomenologically. And how do you do that? Well, there's two key standards. One being true to self. Right? Are your offerings true to self? Are they true to the company that offers them, to the places in which they're offered? Do they match your heritage? Do they match your purpose again, the essence of who you are? And the second standard is being what you say you are to others. Right? So the first is self-focused, but the second one is other-directed. This is how you market it, what you say about it, how you present it, the look and feel of it, and does it go all the way through, basically, or is it a facade? Right? And so we actually talk about, in the book, we look at Ada Louise Huxtable's book, I forget what it is, but she The Unreal America, and she talks about real fakes, and she said, like, Disneyland is a fake, but Universal City Walk is a real fake. And immediately, this is how my partner Jim Yorn, I think, as soon as we saw that, we said, well, that's a two-by-two. Right? There's real, fake, real, fake, and fake, real. And most experiences are fake, real. They're fake realities, right? That's what Disneyland is, a fake reality, but it is not what it says it is. It's not the Magic Kingdom. It's not Cinderella's castle. If you sprinkle pixie dust, you're not really going to fly. But it's amazingly wonderful, true to itself. right? It's not what it says it is, but it is true to itself, and that can be a way of being perceived as authentic. Even in the fake, you can be perceived as authentic, because if it's fake and we like it, we simply call it faux.
I'm trying to write down real, fake. I think I always say I've had the same thing, Joe, or I've felt myself. Because people always, as an architect, people always accuse me of, well, you guys do gingerbread, whatever that is. But so how can you create authentic where everything is synthetic? And I think it's what is the meaning of authenticity? And Disneyland is an environment for many people which is aspirational and authentic to itself. And there's two things, and I might as well use Marty, since we talked about channel Marty a while ago. I'll use Marty's way of saying them. Two of his Mickey's commandments related to me related to each other were tell one story at a time and avoid contradictions. And I think when I think of authenticity, I think about you research, you figure out what your story is, and you try to be true to that story and to that experience in such a way that the guest can be invited into something that is completely synthetic, but that they can be a part of it, and that they can experience the complete story in a complete way without contradictions. And it's sometimes shocking to people when you tell them, well, Disneyland was built by Walt Disney in 1955, but Colonial Williamsburg, which we think of as incredibly authentic, was built in the 1920s and 30s. It was a way for people to experience colonial America, but it was also completely built, and it's been rebuilt and rebuilt. So you get into a deep history of district courts of memory. What is the authenticity of place? But I think it has to be, am I telling a great story, and am I doing it consistently and clearly? Not so much that I have to have that thing on the ceiling because that's what they had 1,000 years ago. It's what supports the story in an authentic way, and that you are, even if you made it up, even if George Lucas made it up, even if somebody else made it up, are you telling it in a clear, concise way without contradictions?
When I think about authenticity, I think about credibility. So using George Lucas as an example in Star Wars, is that if we want this place to feel really authentic, then we have to talk to the people who made it, who created it, right? And not only George Lucas, but the entire Lucasfilm team. So we have to understand fully what makes Star Wars, what is the DNA, what is the spirit of it, what is that credibility that we have to build such a place. And we need to earn that credibility from learning from the experts, right? And it's the same for any scientific science museum. You need to be credible. You need to talk to the people who are the experts who can help to guide you to make sure that it does feel authentic. Because if you did make up a science museum without real science facts, then it's not going to feel authentic, and anyone would feel it the moment that they go into that museum. The other thing about authenticity, about the fake and the real fake, the theme parks, all that, is how can we say what's authentic or not when our emotions are real, when we're experiencing something? When I feel joy and happiness, I don't care where it comes from. I feel joy and happiness. And that's authentic to me. That's real. If I feel scared, that's authentic. If I feel thrilled, that's authentic. I don't care where it comes from. Make me feel human again. I want to feel my emotions again in a way that's maybe fabricated, maybe not. But I want to feel it. And I want to be connected to my humanity again.
I want to tease Joe here with this for a second. He and I had a conversation a couple of years ago about this. Universal Studios backlot is real fake because it is a fake, but it's supposed to be the fake. You're there to see the movie set, so it's real fake. About 20 years ago, there was a huge fire in the backlot, and the courthouse square from Back to the Future burned. And that was a very popular part of the tour, so they rebuilt it. So is this a fake, real fake? Or, I got lost. It's a Hall of Mirrors.
It's the same with the Star Wars thing, right? Is that you're trying to be authentic to a completely made-up story. Exactly. That is instantiated in movies that are themselves synthetic.
Some years ago, we were doing a project for Star Trek, and one of the executives said, "It's not real if it's not on television." That's actually a useful concept. Let's see.
Now it's not real if we don't take a selfie, right? We need to capture that moment. Now it's real.
That's true also. What have theme parks and electronic games learned from each other? And more important, what have our audiences learned from electronic games that influence their expectations of theme parks and even museums?
Well, I'm glad you brought up that question, Bob. So my third book coming out next February explores how we can learn from gaming into to inspire our immersive experiences. And you know, I grew up in the 80s. I gamed and I played a ton of Nintendo. And I tell the story of how, like, as a kid, as a 7-year-old or 8-year-old, playing Oregon Trail, and feeling like I had such power and agency to help guide my team to death or survival. As a kid, that's very empowering. So to think about immersive experiences that gives that sense of power and agency and personalization and customization, and giving it my perspective and my point of view of where I want to go, what I want to do, the things that the people that I want to meet and talk to, all of these things, it just opens up a world of possibilities that gaming has given us for decades. And so how do we create like physical worlds, both digital and physical worlds, that can help to capture a lot of that excitement we feel when we explore these worlds and get lost in it? And how do we feel that sense of urgency? The other thing too about all of these games is we have a role to play. And to be philosophical for a moment, all of us walking around on this earth right now, we sometimes question that, right? What is our role? And when we play a game, there is no doubt who we are. We're gonna play Jedi, we're gonna play a demon slayer, we're gonna play a warrior, we're gonna play a princess. And we have a mission, we have a goal of what we're going to do and how we're going to get there. And there might be obstacles, there might be villains, all of those things, but in that path, as we're about to go to that goal, we have a purpose. For that moment in time, we have a purpose. And all of us, living our lives now, some of us haven't found that purpose. So to be able to do that in an immersive experience where you have a very clear role, a very clear goal, and a very clear purpose, that's something that we can learn in immersive experiences.
I think games are our closest brethren. They're closer to us in the immersive experience world, I think, than movies or animation or books or anything else, because they endeavor to put people into a world, let them play roles in that world that they can act out themselves, and yet it is a very authentic world that they're putting them in, but the guest brings themselves to it, as opposed to a didactic project where a director tells the story to you. The game, you are in that story, and you are responsive, the world responds to you. I think they're very close, and one of the things I've noticed in work I've done with some educational institutions recently is it feels like those two worlds from an academic learning point of view are becoming fused. People who design games, people who have high potential to design immersive environments seem to be the same students. People who animate them seem to be the same students. So I think they're getting closer and closer.
I would echo what you both said, Margaret, particularly the word agency. Right? It's beautiful. Is that when you play games, you have agency, and that is not always the case in sort of the theme experience industry. And again, it gets that personal that I talked about, is giving people that agency, which also, because you have agency, makes it more easily transformative as well. And that's something else that we can learn about how it enables people to transform. I once did a conference a number of years ago, and there were 2 times in this like 2.5-day conference where people did spontaneous applause as opposed to at the end of people speaking. I mean, just spontaneous like applause. And one was when this guy at the beginning sort of got up front and he sort of railed against people. This tells you how long ago it was. There was people in Congress that were saying games were bad and that they could because they changed people, right? They were worried about becoming the shoot 'em up games that caused you to become a mass shooter and that sort of thing. Basically, they blamed Republicans and Tipper Gore for all this. And people spontaneously applauded at this idea that it's ridiculous to think that these games are going to change people. And then the other time was when I was on a panel with a guy who, General Paul Gorman, if I remember right, who under his leadership, the Army created AmericasArmy.com, which is a wonderful experience that really teaches you what it's like to be in the Army, whether you want to be in the Army and it allows you to decide yea or nay. And a guy in the Q&A period got up and stood up. I said, well, when are you going to have games that don't teach people more, that teach them peace and that? And everybody spontaneously applauded. And I said, well, wait a second. The only other time you applauded was you said games don't change people, and now you're applauding because he says he wants games that will change people to be peaceful, right? Which is it, right? And that was, yes, they really do change us.
I want to talk a little bit about IPs. Margaret and Bob, you've worked with some of the world's greatest IPs. One of the things you learned is that your visitors arrive with a range of awareness of those IPs from 10 to 0. How do you please both the deep, committed aficionado and also the guest who has never been exposed to any part of Star Wars before?
Well, I remember, very early on in the project, I came in week 2, and I remember, I think maybe it was, I don't want to say who exactly it was, but they had put up posters.
Oh, come on, tell us.
Oh, I know, I don't want to give credit if it's not really that person, is the question, yeah. So, they put up posters of all the different archetypes of guests that will come into this land. So you have someone at the very end of the spectrum who's just wearing a Mickey Mouse t-shirt. And then you have someone who's wearing a Star Wars t-shirt. And then another one who maybe has like a Mandalorian cape look. And then you have one who's full on, cosplaying a Star Wars character. And every morning when we walked to our desks and our cubicles, we were reminded of the different types of people who would come to this land. And to be reminded that we are going to serve all of these people and it will be an equally enjoyable experience for all of them. But the other thing too is we looked within our own team. Everyone had different levels of fandom. There was some people who didn't know the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek. And then there was someone on our team who actually read fluent Arabic, which is a Star Wars visual language. And so every time I needed something translated, I would go to this person, like, what does it say? So we had our own pool of all the guests that would be coming into our land. And so when we created all of the experiences and retail and F&B and attractions, we would actually bring in our own team members and other cast members who are outside of the team and ask, what do you think? Is this fun? And we got a lot of great input from that, a lot of great feedback, because we were able to listen to all types of people and not just dedicate ourselves to the Star Wars super fans or to just the Disney fans. The little princess who might not be interested and she wants to go to Fantasyland, but then now she's wearing her princess outfit and having, a lightsaber. Like that to us is success, right? And so it really got us excited. It was a great creative challenge looking within our team, but also really testing it and getting as much input as possible.
Yeah, I think you have to find out. I have a great picture of my daughter who was even younger then, of course, when Millennium Falcon opened, and we were at Disneyland with my daughter and a friend of hers, and they're both in princess dresses, and they're in the front seat of the Millennium Falcon piloting, and I know my daughter had never seen a Star Wars movie, and she's dressed as like Cinderella in the front seat. So you have to be able to find that accessibility in what we do. I remember, and you know this too, Bob, we both worked at Kennedy Space Center pretty extensively, and they, some of the folks used to say, okay, we're going to get the space fan. They are going to come out, and they will find it. They will find it on the freeway. They will get out here, and they're going to want to see Saturn V and those things. But our challenge is, how do we get the enrichment tourists to come out who may not be a space fan, but they know that this is a great place to come and learn about history and interesting things, or natural history, or those kind of things. So you've got to find out where those different fans are, and we are, at least for those of you that are in the parks business or in the large scale experience business or museum business, you've got to be able to find a pretty wide swath of audience, age group, interest. And so we can't start out by saying, I'm going to serve the people who know the whole canon, or are going to be looking for every detail. It goes the same with Disney. You can't assume that everybody's a Disney fanatic looking for every little hidden Mickey. There are people who are quite happy to let their other family members enjoy that experience, and they want to read the New York Times at the hotel, right? So it's you have to be able to serve a lot of variety of people.
One of the greatest compliments I heard was they said that they never watched a single Star Wars movie until they went to Galaxy's Edge. That feels good. That feels good, because all of the times that, for us who did grow up with the original trilogy, that was one of the things that we said as a team. We want people to fall in love with this land like we all did when we first watched the movies when they came out in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I saw the Smithsonian's America exhibit a long time ago, but I saw it when it opened in Tokyo. You came down this big ramp, there's a big American flag, there's a big video of Ray Charles singing God Bless America, and I was next to this guy from Japan coming down the ramp, and he said, "This makes me proud to be an American, and I'm not even American."
It's the wishful thinking.
Bob, there is a really wonderful piece of career advice hiding in plain sight in the title of your book. Would you talk about that?
Which advice? What is it?
Career advice.
Oh, career? Career advice? Chasing? The success and failure? Why this title? Dream chasing? The title to me, which actually, to me, writing is rewriting. I try to tell my son and daughter this. Writing is not writing, it's rewriting again and again and again and again. But when the idea that all of us have dreams and ideas, and the difference is, are you willing to go after them aggressively? And are you willing to set up an environment that is willing to help people go after them aggressively, as opposed to passively, or just kind of hope they're going to come to you? That is the difference. So once I had the idea of dream chasing, the writing became a lot more focused, because it was about, okay, let's find examples where, and a lot of people have asked me at signings, they say, well, what's your favorite project? And I don't really necessarily have an answer, but whatever I answer, I always find they're the ones that are the hardest, because those are the ones you think, in the middle of it, you think, this is terrible, I'm never going to do this again, this is never going to get done, it's awful, I hate this company, I hate this idea. And then, like on the 1 year anniversary, everybody says, wasn't that the greatest project? So challenge is a good thing, and being willing to aggressively go after things is a good thing, and it makes a difference.
There, you said it when we were talking about this session. You said that it's not about following your dreams; you need to chase it aggressively.
Yeah.
And
Hunting them down.
that was great.
Grabbing them.
Okay. What have each of you learned about your field that you wish you'd known and applied when you were first starting out? about anything about what you do.
What do we do, Bob? It's you know, it's so hard to think about, you know, just my career, 17 years, and how I jumped from different companies, just chasing something different and following my curiosity. So I want to just say that not to be afraid of defining who you are or what you do or what you're going to do. I think that that's something that has helped me in my whole life. If there was a little bit of fear, or there's a little bit of a possible thing that excites me, or that it seems risky, I like to take it because I feel like that's something that always rewards me in the end. Because I definitely don't want to sit still and coast or park myself and be the one in the room who has all the answers, because I don't. And I want to keep learning, and I want to keep surrounding myself with people who can help me grow and help me learn. And so I don't care how old I'm going to be, but I will always want to put myself in that room. Because the moment that I find myself having all of the answers, then I know it's time for me to quit, which I don't want to do. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's the answer I'm giving.
I'd say the number one thing to me is it's not about you. It's about them, and it's what what I've learned dramatically from the few signings that I've done in the last couple months since the book was released is this huge reminder that we are the stewards of other people's memories. It doesn't matter, I know there's people here from Griffin Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, I'm sure there's many other different long-standing organizations in this room and at IAAPA. People respect and love what we all do, and if you have created something that, or someone before you has created something that people have experienced, and they were taken there by their kids, this could be a baseball stadium or a museum or whatever, they were taken there as kids, they took their kids, they're going to take their kids, you know, their grandkids. We really are stewards of these memories that people have, and it is really, really important to them that you know that you're a steward, you know that they trust you, and they know that you have to move forward, they know you have to move into the future, but they want you to respect their past and their memories at the same time.
My one-word answer is collaborate. If you're in the ideas business, you need to collaborate. You need to find people that will sharpen iron with iron and make your ideas better and enhance them and tell you when you're wrong and all that. Otherwise, it's a lonely business. That's when you get lost in the woods.
Okay, 1 minute each. Tell us about your next book, why we should buy it, what's in it, what's exciting about it. Why are you so excited that you're committing to all the time, sweat, and trouble to actually write it? The next book.
Next book is on the transformation economy. It extends the last 2 chapters, but it's all new ideas and frameworks. And the reason you in particular should buy it is, again, because transformations are built on top of experiences. And there is a whole world that's as big as the experience economy and bigger that need experienced designers to show them the way to create experiences that engage, create meaning, even transport us, and then finally again transform us. Because there's a lot of companies, financial services, Bob and I talked about earlier, that have no idea how to go about doing this. Right? They need you.
So my next book coming out in February, I think I talked a little bit about it already, The Art of Immersive Storytelling Strategies from the Gaming World. I see someone very, very excited about it. Amy Jupiter. This was something that I was like, you know what, when I was at Imagineering, I wanted to bring in gaming people. Because as Bob said, they are very, very close cousins. And so any type of play, especially in gaming, where we do have that agency and that power to move around and explore a world and have consequences, real-time consequences, right? We don't have to wait years for something to when you realize like, oh, that action was actually pretty good. We get real-time feedback of whether something was good or bad, or wrong path or right path. And that's really cool, because I think that in that container of gaming, and in that container of immersive experience, with those two combined and having all of our lessons combined together, it can be super exciting, and we have not even touched the surface of what that could look like. What does that look like to be able to be a world builder like in Minecraft, or to go around and fly around in worlds like Fortnite, right? Like, how do we think about creating those types of worlds that makes people feel like they're in it? That doesn't necessarily always have to be VR either. Are there different ways that we can do that to satisfy that fulfillment and that desire to feel empowered and to feel like you're actually having a goal and a role and a purpose?
We've all gamed the questions in one way or another, so I'll game it slightly and say that my favorite attraction of all time, if there's anybody else here, is the Haunted Mansion, the original, and I love it. And I always wrote it and said, I'll never do anything as good as this. And so I decided, well, one thing you could do is you could write a book about it. So I wrote a book about a novel story about, you know, at the end where they say a ghost will follow you home. Well, what if a ghost dog followed you home? That's the pitch. And it's out. That's why I'm keeping it. Truth in Lending, ghost dog. Kind of explains it.
Very good. Our time is not quite up. I have one final killer surprise question for our panelists. This could be their golden opportunity to This could be their golden opportunity to publicly humiliate themselves. It is something I probably should not ask, but I'm going to, since it's all at the end and it's too late for them to stop me. So for 30 seconds, we're going to let them worry about that while I take care of some housekeeping. First of all, was this panel any good? Once again, we need high ratings when that tablet comes to you. Don't forget to give them a high rating. Also, after this panel, don't leave. Our panelists are going to stay right here to sign autographs or just briefly say hello. And Dave's still back there at the book table if you'd like to get something for them to sign. The front of the line will start in front of Bob Weiss, and people line up on that side going that way, please. And finally, before that final ultimate question, I want to call your attention to the show ambassadors who are working as unpaid volunteers. They have been ushering you in and out of these workshops and keeping all of us on track. And although they're volunteers, they fought like hell to get in here and put even more extra effort to get themselves assigned to help in this Your Legends panel. The fact that they made it to this room proves that they are really enterprising. Now today, they are, quote, just students, but among them are the future leaders of your industry and possibly a real asset to your organization. Talk to them, give them advice, maybe give them an internship, better still a job. You won't be disappointed. Among them are your Legends panelists of the future. Last question. As a gift for this great audience, do you have a simple piece of advice that I have not asked you about? One minute or less, a very simple piece of advice that I have not asked you about that might really benefit them. Apparently not.
I thought you were going to ask me to dance. So. I think the advice that I would give is to really understand what business you are in and what the possibilities are for creating greater value in your business. And bottom line, what I want you to think about is the raison d'etre of your existence in whatever business you're in is to foster human flourishing. How do you go about
I think my advice is never underestimate anyone. I think a lot of people in this room have felt underestimated before in their lives, and I think it's something that we default to when we see someone who's unlike us. So I want to say that be as kind and generous and thoughtful and intentional of all of your connections and all the time that you give to someone else, because they are people too, just like you. And so that's extremely important. And I remember the first time, I met Bob Rogers at BRC, and he sat down with me and met me for the first time. And they said, like, you have to sit down with Bob Rogers because he needs to meet all the writers face to face. And just having that opportunity to be seen and to feel like you have a chance in this industry, in this world, I say that please give that chance to someone that you might not have chosen otherwise.
You have a friend, a family member, a next door neighbor, a employee, a colleague, a collaborator, someone out there with some crazy dream they want to pursue. Tell them to chase after it.
Ladies and gentlemen, stand up and give a standing ovation for